Hi again, everyone. Welcome, and you join me today as we are working through our series I've entitled 66 Books. 66 short podcasts that look at the 66 books of our Bible. And today we're looking at the book of 2 Timothy, the book of the ministry of the Word. Second Timothy has been called by some Paul's swan song. It is indeed his final message and the last inspired letter he wrote. It is very clear that Paul wrote this book. Chapter 1 verse 1 declares it, and a whole host of ancient authors confirm this, as well as church tradition. So who was it written to? Who were the recipients? Well, the book of Acts ends with Paul in prison. He was released from that imprisonment and went to Ephesus, only to leave there for Macedonia, from where he probably wrote 1 Timothy. Most likely he wrote it from the city of Philippi in 62 AD. Nero, Emperor of Rome, was responsible for the beginning of the Roman persecution of Christians. Rumours that he was responsible for the fire that destroyed a large portion of the city caused him to use the unpopular Christians as his scapegoat and blame them. When Paul returned from Spain in 66 AD, his enemies used the official Roman position that was now held against Christianity. Well, they used it against Paul. This time, some believers failed to support Paul after his arrest, and no one was with him at his first defense before the imperial court. He was abandoned by almost everyone. He was in a cold Roman cell, regarded as a criminal, and without hope of acquittal. 2 Timothy gives us all these basic facts. Under these conditions, Paul wrote to Timothy, many believe in the autumn of 67 AD. When he wrote the letter, it is clear that Paul hoped that Timothy would be able to visit him before winter arrived. When Paul wrote 1 Timothy, Timothy was in Ephesus dealing with those difficult disciples we discussed in the last podcast. The situation is the backdrop of 2 Timothy. He is now potentially facing very dark days indeed, maybe even martyrdom. So what is the message of the book? The subject of the book of 2 Timothy is about being faithful to the ministry that God has given you. Added to that, throughout the book there is repeated references to difficult days and to persecution from within and from without. 2 Timothy, like many others, follow the form of an ancient letter. With one minor exception, it does not have the usual customary prayer, which usually followed the thanksgiving at the beginning. So, thinking about the purposes of this book, well, the first purpose of 2 Timothy is to strengthen Timothy, to offer encouragement to him. Rome had just outlawed Christianity, and the Apostle Paul, it seemed, might even very soon be executed. Timothy was an experienced and a seasoned veteran, but under pressure this time, especially in the light of the fact that he was about to lose, in a sense, his spiritual father, he would obviously be susceptible to discouragement. Thus Paul writes to Timothy to strengthen him and encourage him, in spite of his own circumstances. The second purpose of 2 Timothy is to summon Timothy to Rome, if possible as soon as possible. It seemed he wanted Mark to come as well, and he required and desired to have his cloak, his books, and his parchments, which he had left behind in Troas. So in summary, Paul wrote to Timothy to encourage him to fulfill his ministry in spite of the persecution and the defection of believers, and also to summon him to come and visit him in Rome. All believers are to be in the ministry, he reminds him, and they should fulfill that ministry even in the darkest and most difficult of days.